Next week starts the playoffs for most leagues. I'll still have my waiver recommendations to help you down below. But as we near the end of the season, I want to do some top 10 lists just for fun. This week will be my top 10 fantasy disappointing busts for 2016. These players were drafted early but didn't perform accordingly. Their failure to produce has a lot to do with who is and isn't in the playoffs. Number 10, Odell Beckham Jr., wide receiver, New York Giants. Well, he hasn't been terrible. He wasn't worth his number 2 overall pick either. He's had only 2 monster breakout games this season, and he's failed to reach the double-digit mark in 40% of his contests so far this year. Number 9 is Cam Newton, quarterback of the Carolina Panthers. Any week, Cam has the potential to pull off a big score, and he has on several occasions, but in between have been so many duds. He was the first quarterback off the boards, but he's ranked 13th in quarterback fantasy points, just ahead of Andy Dalton. That's the definition of a bust, people. Number 8 is Eddie Lacy, running back of the Green Bay Packers. Before his injury ended his season, Lacy was just bad this year in his first 5 games of the season with no touchdowns, and this is from someone who was picked in the 3rd round. Number 7 is Brandon Cooks, wide receiver of the New Orleans Saints. As a second rounder, Cooks has had a few brilliant games mixed in with too many unimpressive ones because Drew Brees doesn't seem to have a favorite receiver. Number 6 is Alshon Jeffrey of the Chicago Bears. Before he got suspended a few weeks ago, his entire season was already abysmal with only 1 touchdown and an average of 7.5 points per contest. Number 5 is Brandon Marshall, wide receiver of the New York Jets. Picked as a wide receiver 1 in the 2nd round, Marshall failed to produce this year with only 3 TDs all season long. In his past 6 games, he's averaged 6 points per contest. Yikes. Number 4 is Allen Robinson, wide receiver of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Drafted 13th overall after last year's breakout season, Robinson is the definition of a bust this year. He's cracked the double-digit fantasy score in just 1/3 of his contests and has only 13 fantasy points in his past 3 games combined. I'm going to cheat and give you 2 players at number 3 who both suffered serious injuries in the first 2 weeks of the season that devastated the owners who drafted them. Adrian Peterson, running back of the Minnesota Vikings, the 10th pick off the board, who was pretty much the Vikings' offense, and Keenan Allen, wide receiver, San Diego Chargers, taken in the 2nd round as a wide receiver 1, who was Phillip Rivers' favorite target in a pass-happy offense. Can anyone say backbreaker? Number 2 is DeAndre Hopkins, wide receiver of the Houston Texans. Taken 7th off the board, Hopkins showed hints of last year's form in the first 2 games this year, but then he tanked the rest of the way, at least until now, averaging 6 fantasy points over his past 10 games. A lot of that has to do with the subpar play of Brock Osweiler. And number 1 is Todd Gurley, running back of the Los Angeles Rams. As the 5th overall pick in the fantasy draft because of the flashes of brilliance last season, week after week, Gurley has failed to deliver behind a weak offensive line. He has exactly 3 double-digit games and only 4 touchdowns to date this season. Next week, I'll give you my top 10 surprising fantasy breakouts. If you were fortunate enough to make the playoffs, best of luck to you.